Woof! Berlin Fanfest was crazy, and I just wanted to talk a bit about everything that happened, at least from my perspective. So whether you're curious how such a fanfest works in a more general sense, or you're just curious what I was up to, I'm sure I have a little something for you there. Also, I don't normally record like this with a camera on, so this will be a bit more ad hoc, although I still have a script. The arrival. Now, a huge part that can easily be overlooked when setting up to go to a convention far away from where you live is, getting there. Personally, since I'm from Denmark right next door to Germany, I took the bus from like 11:30 in the late evening, which meant that I finally arrived about 8:30 in the morning, too early to check into a hotel, much earlier than any of my buddies, and the majority of the day was spent picking up friends, finding places to eat, and checking into hotels. However, we also visited the venue twice, just to check it out. There's this huge rounded building where most got checked in that leads into a large area where, among other things, the merch store was located, and that then leads into the main building, ffxiv. However, if you were a cosplayer, had a disability, or were media-invited people, you had to take a different entrance, more directly into ffxiv. I unfortunately forgot to take a picture of that whole building with the merch store and all that, but the fact I only ever entered it from the exit side is probably having a big impact on how infrequently I visited it at all. ffxiv is then the main big building, and behind it is an open tunnel over to ffxiv where all the minigames are located, including Dancing Green's dance floor. And in that open area between two hubs is where a whole bunch of food trucks were standing. And to finish off a bit on this arrival day part, I went out to dinner at an Italian place with half of my static, which includes Naomi, Shaq, and Milo. 2 of us had pizza, 2 of us had spaghetti. Day 1. If you were ever worried about finding the place, there were very obvious signs, I'd say like up to half a mile away from the venue, guiding you there. And somehow, some way, while the doors were opened like 3 hours before the show started, the queue was already mostly gone by 7:30. Or that was at least what I was told, as there was a bit of a queue at the cosplayer entrance, which is where I had to go, because I was actually invited, which I didn't believe either. Absolutely crazy! But once we got inside, we could get to our goodie bags, which in this case included a sticker book, some pins, a cap, the bag itself obviously, and an extra sticker that I believe was one of 2 things at random. The one I got was Meteor Viper style, and you also get a single card pack from the Final Fantasy trading card game, which was guaranteed to hold one of the 9 Scion cards. I got Estinian, but eventually traded it for a Grahatia with someone who really needed Estinian specifically to finish his collection. I believe Shaq also got Estinian. So anyway, because we were here like hours early and nothing else was happening until the keynote, everyone was finding seats, which meant the front rows were already packed. Let's just say the spot my group found was distant, but at least we had a screen nearby. But before I continue that story, I want to quickly talk about some of the other things in the FanFest that could be crucial to keep in mind for a future FanFest you might attend. Raffle. If you wanted to have access to the merch store, you had to book a slot in the app they put out for the venue. Book plenty, and take note that you can change your mind easily, so book widely. Anytime that you could reasonably imagine you could be there for, take it until you've gotten your merch. Earlier slots have the extreme advantage that they can get to things before they sell out, and just for reference, despite me having a special early bird slot for day 2, I arrived to like half of everything already being sold out. But let's be real here, fans can have such an incredible appetite for merch that it is pretty much impossible for the store to have enough supply of everything without risking an immense overproduction. What things sell like hotcakes? What things don't? Obviously the Yan plushie was gonna go quick, same for the light sticks, but the very awesome umbrella apparently got yoinked too. The raffling doesn't end there. Several crafting minigames over in the Hop 25 required you to sign up for a raffle. Same rules as the merch store. And finally, if you wanted a meet and greet with any of the awesome people, you also needed to win a raffle. The meet and greets are super simple. When it is about to be your turn, place your bags on the desk and ready your camera app on your phone. When it is your turn, you hand over your phone to the wonderful staff, you greet the awesome person, maybe a couple of words, but typically you then find a pose or two for the picture. You get your phone, you get your bags, and that's that. To be clear, media tickets did not get special privileges on this. I'll get back to that. So, the keynote. Hop 27, the big building, is the place where the keynote, all the panels, the PvP tournament, the live letter, the glam show, and the concerts took place. Filled with chairs in clusters that were labeled, numbers from left to right, letters front to back, so you could easily describe to your friends where you were. Now, my static ended up in the D clusters, if I recall correctly, so that is very far away. And then I noticed a little conversation on my phone between Hector and Lizzie. You see, some of the chairs had special blue ribbons on them for priority seating. I believe these were for people with disabilities. And some of them had white ribbons and were labeled as reserved. Both Hector and I had assumed outright that, even if we were specially invited, these chairs must have been for even more important people. But thanks to Lizzie's guidance, we learned that actually those chairs are for us. Which meant that Hector and I got like near front row seats for the keynote. And got to experience that together, which was definitely not even in the realm of expectations for me. I also ran into Yama, Retzi, Brian Ricardo, Merritt, Jinxie, and a bunch of other people, due to everyone congregating around these special reserved seats. Now, that being said, I will probably be dissecting a bunch of the stuff in the keynote and other panels separately, so that's not really for a video like this, but I can say that watching it together with Hector was very awesome. Just before the keynote, we also had a brief intermission with Liddy showing us his extreme boss guide to Finding the Media Lounge, which was a chill room for the media people. As the rest of the Fanfest didn't open until after the keynote, the place was packed. And the instant the doors opened, we went on to witness one of the craziest traffic jam food queues ever seen. I got a picture of some of it just as an example. We had probably at least a dozen food trucks, and every single one had queues that snaked out so far you weren't entirely sure what you were queuing for. Similarly, Hop 25 opened with all of the minigames and photo op spots and everything. But similar to the food trucks, the queues were long. Milo, one of the Static's fishing extraordinaires, stood in queue for like half an hour to try the fishing minigame. He nailed it, by the way. The long story short is that we didn't get to do that much in Hop 25, because the times where it wasn't flooded with people, it was either about to open or about to close. Over the 2 days, I never got around to even seeing the dance floor near the very back of the place. In fact, to be extra clear, my squad were late to the piano concert with Keiko because we chose to try and explore Hop 25 when people were occupied, only to find that closed right then. So when we got a bunch of pictures of the things, we just barely didn't make it to the dance floor before we got shoved to the exit. In our attempt to try some minigames and exploring the place, we missed pretty much the entirety of the development panel, which focused on sounds. I was told that right at the end of it, we were shown 2 sound effects that sounded like a falcon and maybe a crossbow, that were deliberately left unspecified, maybe hinting at a crossbow-ranged physical? We then actually got to see both the entirety of the community panel and the live letter, which focused entirely on Beastmaster. And let's just say, if you like yourself a little roguelike, then this job might just be your sauce. I have also heard about and read about a lot of people being disappointed that the job is so focused on challenging content like that, because they expected something different. And this is exactly where I've been telling you all for the past 2, if not 3 years, to not expect too much with Beastmaster. Because if you envision something specific, you are almost guaranteed to be disappointed, even if you set your expectations at a reasonable level. I'm of course glossing over this bit too, because it is something to be talked about more in depth in a separate video. And finally, we had Keiko's piano concert, which also featured Amanda for Titania and Honeybee Lovely's themes, and also featuring Soken for the memes and just being epic as he is. You know. A really funny discovery I had shortly before the concert, and to some degree after, is that most of you don't know what I look like. At least not in person. Many said this is because the little camera in the corner doesn't make it super clear, but also, I'm sure many of you don't watch the streams, and I don't really feature much in videos. So when things quieted down, I met some of you because you could hear where I was, which I found very funny. If you did meet me, or even just saw me from a distance at the Fanfest, I would love to hear from you in the comments. That way, you have the freedom to tell your story about meeting me, instead of me just throwing you all out in public without consent. We ain't doing that. Day 2. So this time, because there was no need to register everyone again, the doors opened an hour later. But the party started similarly at 10. 2 hours after the doors opened. My static and I had decided to arrive at 8 to possibly have time in Hub 25 before things exploded, only to find that, ding ding, didn't open until 10 anyway. This is also when I finally got a chance in the merch store, and that is where we picked up our new friend, Lop. This day also kicked off with a Crystalline Conflict tournament, featuring Rook and Lithy, who some of you may know or remember from the Kefka Ultimate race a while ago. Personally, I caught the first match and the last match, due to running off a keyring crafting raffle we got. But due to some unfortunate circumstances, there was a queue bottleneck and technical issues, and ultimately, I surrendered my keyring chance to instead catch the finale of the tournament between Hopeful and Fish. Congratulations to Fish! Those matches were insane. Naoki's room. This show was sort of like a casual hangout talk between Yoshi P and Naoki Hamaguchi, who is in charge of ffxiv. It also finished off with a special trailer for the final part of that game that was specifically made for this occasion. After the show, I went to the media lounge to meet with some people, and while there, I saw Preach Mike, and just as I was about to say hi, he turned into a cloud of smoke and reappeared as a huge corn servant. So I thought it was a bit weird to approach him then. Glamour to Life. This was that catwalk event for cosplayers, which was very cool. What I thought about the most was how those that had a more common outfit, but was later in the lineup, would feel, because the first Reen, the first Gaia, the first Gra almost certainly got a much greater applause than the 10th, which is unfortunate. That said, I watched this together with Brian Ricardo, and some of it together with Ashapa. Am I pronouncing that right? What's with us Danes and choosing really weird names for our channels, am I right, Ben? Meet and greet. Despite me signing up for like 80% or more of all the meet and greets, I was only fortunate enough to get the very final one with Naoki Hamaguchi. So right after the cosplay event, I had to rush off to eat something and then meet and greet time, which was super cool. A little bit of Kai lore is that ffxiv was actually my first Final Fantasy game, and it then led to trying out some of the others. You may have heard me ask for music from ffxiv or fights from it in the past. Yeah, a lot of Final Fantasy references fly over my head without someone pointing them out, because my catalog covers like 7, 1, Tactics Advanced, mostly, so the first time my eyes lit up with recognition was probably Ivalice. I wanted to mention this bit about ffxiv being my first to Hamaguchi, but decided against it because I didn't want to be a bother. That being said, I have seen several of these awesome people, from Goji Fox to Soken, outright say that meeting the fans is such an awesome experience, so I wonder if it would have been an issue if I had said something. I can also speak for myself, that aside from things like the Keynote and the upcoming last thing, the best part about the whole Fanfest, for me, was meeting the community in person. So every time someone said they missed me or that they saw me but didn't want to bother me, I was crushed because I wanted to meet and greet you too. The Primals. To finish off the whole Fanfest, we have of course the Primals concert, and it was incredible. I didn't have a light stick, they were sold out, remember? But if you saw Wop near a very tall guy, one of my static members, on the right side of the stage, that was possibly me. The whole concert was crazy awesome, from Honeybee Lovely crowd screaming, "Alright!" to the sheer amount of voices during Howling Blade, to the frog backup dancers for the Dancing Green song, to Sonic Boom! It was all amazing. And then at the very end of it all, the incredible speech from all of the awesome people. It really makes you remember what it is that makes this game and this world of Final Fantasy so incredible, and reminds me exactly how much the development team pours their hearts into all this to make it incredible, as much as they possibly can. And yeah, sometimes we might not fully agree on what would make the game better, but then again, just between all the players, we can't either. So when some big job changes happen, one portion of the player base thinks it's great, and then a different one thinks it's the worst thing ever. And these kinds of things, remembering that the dev team are just people that want to make the most awesome game they can, is also part of the reason why I care so much to be reasonable and fair when I do give criticism to the game, and not just look at the negatives without also considering the positives whenever I can. And before finishing off, I would give one pro tip for someone who were to go to a Fanfest in the future. If you want to go to anything that has a queue, or you want a front seat to a panel, you pretty much have to sacrifice the last 5 to 15 minutes of a panel to have the advantage on the queue for something, or be there for the panel, possibly half an hour or more in advance. The end. After the Primals concert, I announced both to the community Discord, link in the description, and to other creators that I was leaving and where to find me before I did, which led to Hector specifically coming to say goodbye, which meant a lot to me. A few community people also came, which was awesome! And if you don't know how to approach a content creator or something for an event like this, my recommendation is the following. Obviously, some of the most well-known creators might be so busy that they simply don't have time, but I do think I speak for a lot of us when I say hello. Feel free to say how you feel about what they do. I highly advise against saying something negative, even if it's just a joke, it could be misunderstood. If you want one, try and ask for a picture. If you would like the picture taken in some specific way, don't be shy. In most cases, that helps the creator because they don't know how would be great either. Beyond this point, I think it highly depends on the situation whether you stick around for further questions or just move on. But those initial steps, unless the person is busy and has to go, usually I think that if they have time, and well, if they don't want to anyway, well, maybe they're having a bad day or something. Don't take it personally. And keep in mind that you're part of what makes what they, or at least what makes what I do, so awesome. So at least I personally am just as excited to meet you as you might be to meet me. If you are excited to meet me, of course. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Twitch or Ko-Fi. Links in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, I have a master's degree in applied mathematics, so if you ever wondered why there are so many numbers in my videos, that would probably be why.